Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I'm a bouncer at this bar, and the place has been my second home for all that time, and I've seen just about everything you can imagine. If anyone asks what the job is like, I tell them it's basically running a daycare. Except it's at night, and instead of dealing with toddlers, you're dealing with grown adults who turn into toddlers the second alcohol hits their system. Sometimes they don't even need to be drunk to act like children. This night started out like most others. We had a popular local band playing, so the place was pretty packed. The building is split down the middle with a wall running through it. One side is a pool hall where people shoot games and drink beer. The other side is the bar and entertainment area where the stage is set up. There's a door on each end of that wall, and I usually post up near one of them because I can see both rooms without having to constantly walk circles around the place. My team was doing the usual rounds, keeping eyes out for anyone who'd had too much, people getting rowdy, drugs, all the standard stuff we deal with on a Friday night. We had 4 of us working that night, which was pretty standard for a band night. I was standing near the door between the 2 rooms when I noticed this couple sitting at the bar across the way. The woman was someone we knew pretty well. She'd been in before, and every time she got drunk, she caused problems. We'd had to throw her out twice in the past 6 months. Her man was with her, and they seemed to be having a decent enough time. He was a bigger guy, probably outweighed me by 30 or 40 pounds. There was also this other guy sitting near where I was standing. He'd been coming to this bar for years. Super chill person. He's a professionally trained boxer, barely drinks at all, and I had never once seen him get aggressive with anyone. He usually just comes in, has a beer or two, hangs out with friends, and heads home at a reasonable hour. The guy was in his late 30s, always respectful to staff, always tipped well. Tonight he'd come in with a big group, looked like maybe 20 of his buddies. They were spread out between both rooms, playing pool, listening to the band, just having a good time. I was keeping an eye on the crowd when I saw the woman get up from the bar and walk over to where this guy was sitting. It was probably around 10:30 p.m. at this point. We have cameras throughout the place, so I could see her start trying to flirt with him. She was clearly drunk, leaning in too close, touching his arm, playing with her hair, the whole 9 yards. He wasn't interested. I could see him politely shake his head and turn away from her. He even moved his chair a bit to put some distance between them. She didn't take it well. She stood there for a moment, then stormed back over to her man at the bar. I couldn't hear what she was saying from where I was standing, but I could tell she was working herself up about something. She was talking fast, getting animated, pointing back at the guy. Then I saw her pointing back at the guy who'd rejected her. Her man's face changed. He went from relaxed to angry in about 2 seconds. He stood up, and I knew this was about to go sideways. I started moving closer, but they were already on the move. The woman and her man walked over to where the other guy was sitting. I was maybe 15 feet away at this point, close enough to hear bits and pieces. The guy who'd been sitting there stood up when he saw them coming. He tried to explain what had actually happened. He told the man that his woman had come over and bothered him, and he'd politely turned her down. He asked the man to please get his woman to leave him alone since she'd been the one causing trouble. The woman immediately started yelling, saying he'd called her names and disrespected her. Complete lies, but her man believed her. But before the boxer could finish explaining, the man grabbed him by the collar and started shoving him backward toward the wall. That's when all hell broke loose. What this couple didn't realize was that the guy they were messing with had come in with about 20 of his friends that night. They were scattered around the bar, and the second they saw their friend getting grabbed, they started moving. I saw guys putting down pool cues and turning from the bar. The whole thing happened in maybe 10 seconds. The boxer threw a couple of quick jabs at the man who'd grabbed him. Clean hits, right to the face. The man stumbled back but didn't go down. The woman decided she wanted to jump in too, so she came at the boxer with her hands up. He hit her as well. Being a trained boxer, when he threw that punch, it landed hard. I mean really hard. It caught her right in the mouth and literally folded her bottom row of teeth backward. Blood went everywhere. I'd never seen anything like it in 3 years of doing this job. She dropped immediately. My team jumped in at that point. We got between everyone and started separating people. It took all of us to keep the 20 friends from turning this into a full-scale brawl. A couple of them were already squaring up with the man, but we managed to get control. We got the married couple outside while keeping everyone else inside. The guy who threw the punches was calm, like nothing had even happened. He sat back down and ordered another beer. Outside, the woman was bleeding pretty badly from her mouth. She kept spitting blood onto the sidewalk. Her man was pacing back and forth, still angry but smart enough not to try coming back inside. He knew he'd started it and that he was outnumbered. The woman kept spitting blood and demanding that I call the police. She wanted the guy who hit her arrested immediately. She was screaming about assault charges and how she was going to sue. I tried to explain to her that calling the cops was probably not a good idea since her man had grabbed the other guy first. Technically, the boxer had just been defending himself. We had it all on camera, clear as day. She refused to listen to me though. She kept insisting that I call the police right away. She didn't care what I thought about it. Her man was telling her to calm down, but she wasn't having it. I warned her one more time that this wasn't going to go the way she expected, but she wouldn't back down. She said if I didn't call them, she would. I told her it was her decision and pulled out my phone, and so I called the police. They arrived about 15 minutes later. 2 squad cars pulled up. When they showed up, I explained exactly what happened. I walked them through the whole thing, step by step. I told them we had the whole thing on camera, and I could show them the footage if they needed. One of the officers went inside to talk to the boxer and get his side. The others stayed outside with the couple. We pulled up the camera footage on the office computer and showed it to the first officer. You could see everything clearly. The woman approaching the boxer, him turning her down, her going back to her man, them confronting him, and the man grabbing the boxer first. The officer nodded and went back outside. I had to work really hard not to laugh when I watched the officers walk past the boxer and head straight for the woman's man. They asked him to put his hands behind his back. They put him in handcuffs right there in front of her. The woman completely lost it. She started yelling at the cops, demanding to know why they were arresting her man when he wasn't the one who hit her. The officers explained that he had started the physical fight by grabbing the other guy first. Everything that happened after that was considered self-defense under the law. They told her that her man was being arrested for assault. That's when she shouted something I'll never forget. She screamed about how this was exactly why people shouldn't call the cops. I looked right at her and reminded her that calling the police had been entirely her idea. I'd actually tried to talk her out of it multiple times, but she'd insisted. She just stood there with blood running down her chin, staring when they loaded her man into the back of the police car. One of the officers asked if she needed medical attention. She said no and walked off down the street. The boxer and his friends were free to stay and enjoy the rest of their night, which they did. They stayed until close, around 2 a.m. The couple got banned from the bar for 90 days. I wrote up an incident report and filed it with management. We kept the camera footage in case anything came of it legally. Nothing ever did. I didn't see them again for about a year. When the woman finally came back in, I recognized her immediately. I could see she'd had to get extensive dental work done on her entire bottom row of front teeth. They looked brand new, probably cost her a few $1,000s. You'd think an experience like that would humble someone, make them think twice about their behavior. You'd think getting your teeth knocked out and watching your man get arrested because you lied would teach you a lesson. Nope. Within 2 visits, she was back to her old tricks, getting drunk and starting drama. She tried to start something with another woman at the bar over a guy who wasn't interested in either of them. We had to throw her out again. I've been living in apartments my whole adult life, crammed into small spaces with thin walls, and neighbors who seemed to think the middle of the night was the best time to rearrange furniture. When I found a house to rent 5 years ago, I was thrilled. My own yard, my own driveway, actual space between me and whoever lived next door. I signed the lease without thinking twice and moved in during January, already imagining quiet evenings and summer barbecues. That dream died within the first week. My next-door neighbor made the next 4 years of my life absolutely miserable. The guy was somewhere in his late 40s or early 50s, but he'd never moved out of his parents' house. Not once in his entire adult life. He lived with his elderly parents in the house next to mine, and he treated their driveway like his personal stage. Every spare second of his day was dedicated to his truck, washing it, waxing it, admiring it, showing it off to anyone who'd look. When he wasn't obsessing over that truck, he was either bragging about whatever awful thing he'd just done to someone or hitting on every wife and daughter on the block. The creepy behavior started right away. During my first week there, I noticed footprints in my yard every morning, fresh tracks in the snow leading right up to my windows. At first I thought maybe it was an animal or something, but the prints were obviously from boots. They came from his driveway, crossed into my yard, circled around to 3 different windows, then went back. I started paying closer attention, and that's when I realized what was happening. This guy was walking into my yard at night to peek through my windows and see what I was watching on TV or playing on my computer. I tried closing my curtains completely, but that didn't stop him from trying. The footprints kept appearing every morning. I bought a basic security system the next day and installed a few cameras around the house. The cameras cost me about $300, but it was worth every penny. The footprints stopped after that, but he found other ways to invade my space. He started mowing part of my yard. Not the whole thing, just a strip along the side. And he'd do it the day right after I mowed, like he was making some kind of point. I thought maybe I was confused about where the property line was, so I asked my landlord about it. Turns out this neighbor, I'll call him Mike, had been arguing about the property line for years. He thought that section of my yard belonged to him, even though it didn't. My landlord even showed me the official property survey from when the house was built. The line was clear, and that strip of grass was definitely on my side. My landlord told me not to worry about it, that it was just grass, so I let it go. But Mike didn't stop there. Whenever I had friends over, he'd come outside and stare. Just stand there in his driveway, watching. Sometimes he'd pretend to be doing something with his truck, but his eyes were always on my house. A few of my friends mentioned that he'd made weird comments to them when I wasn't around. One friend told me he'd asked her if she was my girlfriend and made some inappropriate comment about her appearance. Another said Mike had questioned him about what I did for work and how much money I made. If I went into my backyard to relax, suddenly Mike had a reason to be in his backyard too. If I was grilling, he'd come out and start doing yard work right along the fence line. If I was just sitting there reading, he'd find some excuse to walk around his yard and look over. If I stayed inside or went to the front yard, there he was in his driveway, positioned so he could see straight into my living room window. I started keeping my blinds closed most of the time, which meant I couldn't enjoy the natural light I've been so excited about when I moved in. When I mowed my lawn, he'd drag a lawn chair out to his driveway and sit there watching me the entire time. Not just watching casually, but staring the whole time. The second I finished and went inside, he'd put the chair away. It was like living under constant surveillance. I started documenting everything. Every weird interaction, every time he was in his driveway when I came home, every comment he made. I kept a log with dates and times. The final straw came one morning around 7:30 when I caught him deliberately sending his dog into my front yard to do its business. He had a fenced backyard where he normally let the dog out, but that morning he walked it right onto my lawn instead. This wasn't the first time either. I've been finding dog waste in my yard for weeks, but this was the first time I actually caught him doing it. I'd had enough. I walked outside and told him he needed to stay on his side of the property line and keep his dog off my lawn. He got aggressive right away. He responded by threatening to break into my house and smash all my cameras and my computer. He said he knew I was recording him and that he'd make me regret it. I pulled out my phone and started recording the conversation. That made him even angrier. He stepped toward me and I backed up toward my door. I called the police right away. They came out about 20 minutes later and talked to both of us. I showed them the video of him threatening me. I showed them my security footage of him sending his dog into my yard. I showed them the log I've been keeping of his behavior. But all he got was a warning. The officers told him to stay away from me and my property, but no charges, no real punishment, just a slap on the wrist. After that, Mike got more sneaky about things. He stopped approaching me directly, but the surveillance continued. He'd take pictures of my car with his phone. He'd write down the license plates of anyone who visited me. One of my friends saw him doing it and confronted him, but Mike just walked inside. I contacted my landlord multiple times about the situation. I sent emails with video evidence and my detailed log. My landlord was sympathetic but said there wasn't much he could do since Mike didn't own his property either, his parents did. Last fall, I'd finally had enough. I told my landlord I was moving out when my lease was up. During that conversation, my landlord mentioned something interesting. Mike was on workers' compensation for an injury he claimed to have gotten at work about 8 months earlier. He'd supposedly hurt his back lifting something and couldn't work anymore. But Mike was also running his mouth around the neighborhood, bragging about how he was using those workers' comp checks to start his own under-the-table landscaping business. My landlord didn't like Mike much. Nobody in the neighborhood did. Mike had hit on the landlord's daughter-in-law multiple times over the years, making crude comments whenever she was outside. And recently, he'd started trying to talk to their 17-year-old granddaughter, asking her if she had a boyfriend and telling her she looked good. My landlord's son and his family lived directly across the street, so they had to deal with Mike all the time. They complained to Mike's parents, but his parents were elderly and seemed either unable or unwilling to control their son. I thought about what my landlord told me and an idea formed. I waited and watched. Sure enough, Mike bought himself a brand new work truck and trailer. He spent around $30,000 on the setup based on what I could tell from the dealer stickers still in the window. He even got his business name and phone number printed on the side of the truck door. Big lettering that said Mike's Landscaping with his cell number underneath. He was working in his yard almost every day doing heavy landscaping work. I watched him carry 50-pound bags of mulch like they weighed nothing. He'd load up 10 or 12 bags at a time into a wheelbarrow and push it around. I watched him climb up and down ladders for hours while trimming trees. I watched him operate a heavy-duty chainsaw and haul large logs. I watched him dig post holes with a manual auger, something that takes serious back strength. For someone supposedly too injured to work his regular job, he seemed perfectly healthy when he was building his little illegal business. I started keeping a new log, this time documenting his work activities. I took out my phone and started recording. I got videos of him hauling mulch bags. I got pictures of him up on ladders. I got footage of him operating equipment and doing all kinds of physical labor that someone with a legitimate work injury shouldn't be able to do. I documented everything over the course of several weeks, making sure I had solid evidence. I recorded him working at different times of day. I got footage of him loading and unloading his trailer. I even got video of him doing landscaping work at other houses in the neighborhood, clearly running his business. One day I followed him when he left with his trailer loaded up. He went to a house about 3 miles away and spent 4 hours doing yard work there. I recorded him from across the street getting clear shots of his truck with the business name visible and him doing heavy physical labor. Then I sent it all to the fraud department of the workers' compensation office. I included the videos, the pictures, and a detailed timeline of what I'd witnessed. I mentioned his new truck with his business information on it. I noted the approximate $30,000 he'd spent on the truck and equipment. I explained the fact that he was openly bragging about using workers' comp money to fund his under-the-table operation. I provided the timeline of his supposed injury versus his actual physical capabilities. I included screenshots of his parents' address where he lived, his full name, and every detail I could think of that would help them investigate. Then I moved to my new place and waited. My new rental was perfect. It cost me $100 more per month, but it was worth it. Acres of land between me and the nearest neighbor. Complete privacy. No one watching through my windows. For the first few weeks, I kept expecting something to go wrong. I gotten so used to being watched that I felt paranoid even though there was no one around. But slowly I started to relax. 3 months went by. I heard through my old landlord that Mike was still doing his landscaping business, still bragging about how smart he was for gaming the system. Then today I got a call from my old landlord. He was laughing when I answered. He told me that Mike had been found guilty of workers' compensation fraud. The investigation had taken months, but they'd used my evidence along with their own surveillance. They'd sent investigators to watch him work. They'd documented everything. Mike had been ordered to pay back every single dollar he'd received, over $40,000 total. Every check he'd used to buy that truck, to fund his business, to support himself while he scammed the system. And on top of that, he was facing potential jail time. The prosecutor was pushing for 6 months because of how blatant the fraud was. My old landlord also told me that Mike's parents were furious with him. They'd apparently had no idea he was committing fraud. They thought he was legitimately injured. Now they were on the hook for some of his legal fees since he was living in their house. His fancy truck and equipment were being seized to help pay back what he owed. His under-the-table business was done, and everyone in the neighborhood knew what he'd done. I've been working 2 jobs for the past year, trying to help my parents keep our heads above water. Money's been tight since Dad got laid off from the factory, and Mom's part-time work at the grocery store barely covers groceries. We had to make a choice between keeping up with the mortgage on our current house or the old one we used to live in. The old house held a lot of memories, but we couldn't swing both payments. My parents were in the process of giving it back to the bank when my cousin called in August. She was desperate. She had a baby, and her baby daddy was supposedly getting his life together. They needed a place to stay, and she promised they could help us out. If they pay the utilities and just $400 a month toward the mortgage, we could keep the house and maybe get back on track. Her baby daddy said he had a job lined up, good pay, starting immediately. My parents are soft-hearted people, especially when it comes to family, so they agreed. I had my doubts from the start. My cousin had always been the type to make promises she couldn't keep, but I kept my mouth shut. My parents needed the help, and maybe she'd changed. 3 weeks in, I knew I'd been right to worry. My parents called me almost every other day, frustrated and exhausted. The utilities were still in our name. My cousin and her baby daddy kept saying they'd switch them over, but it never happened. They hadn't paid a single dollar toward rent or utilities. Her baby daddy quit his job after 1 day, saying the work was too hard and the boss was disrespectful. He refused to look for another one. Then my parents found out they both gotten paychecks from previous jobs, around $800 total. Still, nothing came our way. My dad finally had enough. He called my cousin and told her it wasn't working out. They had 2 weeks to leave. She cried, begged for more time, promised they'd pay everything they owed. My dad held firm. A week into those 2 weeks, the power company called. The bill was months overdue and they were shutting off the electricity. My parents couldn't pay it. They'd asked my cousin and her baby daddy repeatedly, but they refused to pay or put the utilities in their own name. So the power got shut off. I was at work when my mom called me, almost in tears. My cousin had called the power company and absolutely lost it on them, screaming and cursing, demanding they turn the power back on. But she still wouldn't pay the bill or transfer it to her name. The power stayed off. A week later, they finally moved out. My parents drove over to check on the house, and 20 minutes later, my phone rang. My mom told me I needed to get over there right away. I asked what happened, but she just said I needed to see it for myself. I'd just gotten home from my overnight shift and crashed into bed. Sleep is precious when you're working 2 jobs. But the panic in my mom's voice got me up. I threw on clothes and drove the 20 minutes to the old house. The smell hit me before I even opened the door. Dog poop everywhere. Dirty diapers scattered across the floor. Both bathroom mirrors were smashed. Glass all over the tile. In the downstairs bathroom, they'd ripped the sink clean off the wall. Water damage stained the floor. Eggs were smashed and dried on the kitchen floor, the stink mixing with everything else. And the banister, the beautiful 100-year-old wooden banister my great-grandfather had built, was broken into pieces. I just stood there staring. My dad was on the phone with the police. 20 minutes later, a cop showed up. When he walked in, I recognized him immediately. We'd gone to school together, helped each other out on group projects, stayed friendly over the years. He looked around, shook his head, and started taking pictures. He told me it was really bad and promised he'd make sure the case got pushed through. I thanked him and told him I appreciated it. We did some cleanup with help from our old neighbors who were horrified when they saw the damage. By the time I got home, I was exhausted, angry, and heartbroken. Then I checked my phone and saw the notification. My cousin had posted on her account, tagging my entire family. It was long, multiple paragraphs of pure venom. She said she hoped we'd die slow, painful deaths, called us filthy, socially unacceptable, said the whole family hated us. She called me a slur, misspelled as dyke, and said our dead grandmother would be ashamed of us. She even went after my disabled sister, mocking her for things she couldn't control. I don't usually get involved in online drama, but this crossed every line. I sat down and typed out my own post, twice as long, laying out everything. The unpaid rent, the trashed house, the lies, the photos of the destruction. I didn't hold back. She blocked me within minutes, but I'd already screenshot everything. I posted it all on my account with the photos of the damage. My phone exploded. Messages poured in from family, friends, even her aunt from her father's side. People were furious. They commented on her posts, sent her private messages, called her out publicly. Friends I hadn't talked to in years reached out to tell me they had my back. One mutual friend who used to be close with both of us messaged me, horrified by what she'd done. We got to talking and now we're planning a cross-country trip together. My cousin's online reputation, the one she'd carefully built over years, crumbled in hours. She lost friends. She had to lock down all her accounts because people wouldn't stop messaging her, calling her out for what she'd done. But the real justice came later. The police pushed the case through. Vandalism, destruction of property, felony charges for both her and her baby daddy. With their records and the evidence, they'd likely lose custody of their kids. Animal control got involved too after neighbors reported how they treated their dog. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.